Hey guys, this is Curtis Alexander. I'm a pharmacist. In this video, I'm going to be covering tips that you can use to make taking Sinemet easier. Before I get into that, real quick, go to the link in the description if you're looking for options outside of drugs and surgery, including ones involving Parkinson's and some of these chronic disease states. Make sure to go and grab that. It's free. Okay. So when we're talking about Sinemet, we're talking about Parkinson's disease. It's pretty much the gold standard that if somebody's diagnosed with Parkinson's, that we start them with. Now, it's really important to understand what Sinemet is doing in your body. Is going to make some of these tips make a little more sense. So Sinemet is a combination of two medications, carbidopa and levodopa. Now, the biggest thing, we really want this levodopa in your body because we want to increase dopamine levels in your body. Levodopa is converted to dopamine. So we get levodopa into your plasma, into your blood, gets to the blood-brain barrier, and it's converted to dopamine. That's the ideal case scenario. Unfortunately, what happens is dopamine, when it gets in the plasma, it can be converted before it gets to the blood-brain barrier. It can be converted to dopamine. And when you get dopamine, for example, in the gut, it can cause nausea. Okay. And so what we do is they add the carbidopa in there to block this conversion of dopamine to levodopa until it gets to the blood-brain barrier. Okay. So basically, carbidopa is in there to deal with one of the biggest side effects of levodopa, which is the nausea, the vomiting that some people can experience. So let's get into some of the tips. So first of all, if you're going to start on Sinemet, take it a half hour before a meal. You can, if you want, take it an hour and a half to 2 hours after a meal. That should be good at that point. But we want to take it on an empty stomach because well, I'm going to get into that in a bit. We'll talk about the meals that you can use. But taking it with food can mess with it. Now, there are certain people that have to take it with a little bit of food. What'll happen is they'll do it on an empty stomach, and some people can't tolerate it. The nausea and vomiting is that bad. If you're in that group, you can take it with food, but we want to make sure that it's a low fat and low protein meal. Basically, you want a high carb meal, whether that's a piece of bread, a cracker, or something along that line. We don't want it with protein or fats because they contain, like milk contains fat and protein, and those are amino acids. Basically, it can interfere with the levodopa part of Sinemet. So it's got to be a high carbohydrate snack, low fat, low protein, if you need to do that. Ideally, we want you taken on an empty stomach. Okay, the other thing is when you start Sinemet, chances are that your doctor is going to start you on the 25/100. If Sinemet's the gold standard, that's the gold standard dose to start with. And they will do that 2 to 3 times a day and kind of move you up slowly. So some people will start on 1 tablet a day and then move up till we get them to 2 to 3 times a day. Okay, and part of the reason we do that is we're trying to minimize this problem up here, is that conversion to dopamine in your blood before it gets into your brain, trying to minimize that nausea. Okay, one of the things I want to point out, we almost never start people on the extended release. It's not that you can't, it's just that starting someone out, you tend to be able to get a little more consistent blood levels with the immediate release. That doesn't seem like it would make sense because the extended release is supposed to have that regular blood levels. But when you're starting someone, it's easier to kind of figure out a dose with the immediate release. Okay. Now, one place where you can see extended release is you're using immediate release during the day. If you find that you're having issues at 1 or 2 in the morning, it may make sense to add in an extended release dose towards bedtime. And then eventually some people do or are able to move to extended release during the day. But ER tends to be a good option at night if you have those early morning issues, okay? The other thing I like to point out to people, they will experience the nausea sometimes no matter what we do. And it's good to remind those people and remind you that sometimes the side effects will level out. You know, you can have that nausea, maybe vomiting when you first start, but then your body will become somewhat accustomed to it. Those can kind of level out. Doesn't always happen. If it doesn't, obviously we have to move on to something different, but it's something to keep in mind. And finally, SLGS, big rule with this: start low, go slow. Okay. And the same thing happens if you decide to stop. If you and your doctor decide to stop, it's not something you would want a cold turkey. That can introduce another set of problems. So let me know in the comments, have you taken Sinemet? Did you experience problems? Did any of these types of tips help minimize those things? If you have any tips or tricks yourself, that would be appreciated, not only by myself, but anybody that watches the video. It's going to be helpful to hear your feedback. So speaking of which, I hope this video was helpful, guys. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.